This morning's first keynote presentation is given by a gentleman called Steve Molyneux. I first came across Steve just over a year ago. That's probably when we met. And since then, I've been constantly impressed by the innovative ways that Steve uses technology in his everyday life as part of what he does in various walks of life. Sorry, my presentation keeps skipping ahead. As part of what he does in his day-to-day life. He works with numerous schools, consistently showing them how they can embrace technology and really make best use of it in the areas that they do. Personally, I'm really excited to hear what Steve has to say to us, and I really think it's going to set the context of today, which is going to give us some exciting talking points going forward into the workshop sessions later this morning. So without further ado, I'd like to invite you all to put your hands together and welcome Mr. Steve Molyneux.
Probably dying from a cold, so if I start to cough and splutter, then you'll realise why. We've only got about an hour, and so I thought what I'd do is I would focus on two things. I run an organisation called the iPad Academy. As you'll probably be aware, the iPad has had a massive impact over the past 2 years on education, both secondary and also in terms of primary. So I thought what I'd do is I'd spend the first part of this talk just giving examples of how the iPad is having an impact on some of the schools that we're working with. And then in the second part, I'm going to give you a demonstration. We're going to have a hands-on demonstration of a product that still allows us to have that empowerment and control of the classroom that we require, but doing away with the classroom front, so doing away with the projector, but still engaging with pupils using a product called Nearpod. You'll all have the app on your iPods, on your iPads, and then the workshop session that you'll have with myself and a colleague, Mark York, will actually demonstrate how we create that particular content. Do you actually use iPads in your schools at present? Quite a few of you. I'm guessing that most of you will probably use them as class spaces rather than have a complete one-to-one rollout. So you have them as resources where teachers may roll out 25 of them, distribute them in the class, end of the class they all get handed back. Am I right? That's probably, you haven't yet reached that stage where every child has their own. You all laugh, and yet we have a number of primary schools that have actually sort of reached that particular stage, which is why I'm going to show you some of the content that these create. So I've linked it in with a sort of an overarching theme called the 4 Ages of education, because as you start to look at the impact that technology has on society and education itself, then you do see quite a lot of change. Some of you who have seen me speak before will recognize some of these slides, and there are some new ones and some changes, which is why I'm going to focus a lot more on the content. But there are a number of challenges that face today's education establishments, particularly when it comes to the use of IT, and when you are a head or a budget holder, what IT do you purchase and when do you purchase it? The first is, of course, the sheer growth of information and the information overload on the web, because this information, this technology, the pace of change is so rapid that it's happening within one generation, and we don't actually see that change. But if we think back, if we look back to 1993, in 1993, there were only 620 websites worldwide, right? How many of you have a VLE? Right, quite a few of you have a VLE, still, unfortunately, right? The VLE was only invented in 1994, right? So at that point, there were only 620 websites worldwide. By 1998, there were 26 million websites worldwide. And last year, there were 620 million websites worldwide. So a huge amount of information is actually already available out there on the web. So we do have a massive amount of information overload, which is a challenge that we face when we look at how our young people are accessing that information. The second challenge that we face is that our students actually have access to information and to IT that's probably more powerful than the IT that we have in our schools. right? They have smartphones in their pockets that are more powerful than the desktops that we put in these horrible things called IT suites. And the reason for that is quite simple. Every piece of technology goes through a standard distribution curve. It has an introduction, it goes through some level of growth, it reaches maturity. So in terms of the PC market, we have a level of maturity at the moment in our schools, but it then goes through a decline and eventually it gets withdrawn from the market. And that happens with every piece of technology, right? You only have to look back. How many of you, I'm just trying to gather the rough age groups of the audience, how many of you had an original video cassette recorder that you recorded your TV shows and you used it in school? So how many had a VCR? Most of you. How many of you still have a VCR? How many have moved to DVD? Right. How many of you got rid of DVD because you've now moved to Blu-ray? One. How many have got rid of that completely because in actual fact they're now all redundant and most of your video is now digitized and held somewhere either in the cloud or on a school server? Yep. So you see all of that has probably happened within no more than 25 years. So technology is very, very fickle. It moves incredibly quickly. So we've already had this curve in terms of the personal computer, in terms of our schools. And we've already reached that maturity. Our biggest problem is what's happened in the consumer space. So we've had a rapid increase in the number of mobile devices that our children have access to. So they have access to IT in their pocket. And yet, what is the IT that we ban within our schools? Answer, the IT that's in their pocket. The amount of schools that I go into which says mobile phones are banned in the school. The reason being because most of our teachers see them as a disruptive technology because we have yet to find a proper use on how to make use of those efficiently and effectively in the classroom. And hopefully we can demonstrate those changes today. So, you know, we have these newer platforms that children are either being given access to because their parents or their grandparents are purchasing them, and yet we still invest in sort of the traditional IT and just buying more and more of these expensive grey boxes that we then turn around and plug into a wall, into a place called an IT suite, which of course tethers us to an environment that isn't necessarily conducive to creative learning. So student access is another challenge that we face. And then there's this challenge that we face. This is research from Morgan Stanley, which demonstrates that by the summer of this year, there will be more data consumed on mobile devices than on desktop devices. So again, that begs the question, when you're looking at an IT strategy within a school, why are we looking at having machines plugged in wired to networks when we could be looking at wireless, when we could be looking at accessing information on mobile devices, if that is the way that the current trend is going. So information consumption is also changing rapidly. Now, this disruptive technology, these tablets as a disruptive technology, right, is no different from any other challenges that we faced throughout the eons. So if we look at these four ages, if we look at the type of innovation, so here we're looking at about the 5th century BC. The innovation here that we had was language. The age was of the philosopher. We had our education system here was basically one-to-one learning. The teachers were the great philosophers of the time, Aristotle, Socrates, Zeno. The students were those of the very rich and the very powerful, tended to be male-dominated, but we used technology of the day to build an education system that met the needs of that particular society. So along comes 1450, so along comes Johannes Gutenberg, and he invents something called the printing press. And that allows us as educators to standardize on our works. So we know we now have standard textbooks, we don't have spelling mistakes, we have standard works, we have structured academic content, and then we start to generate schools for the few. The few, again, were male-dominated. The few were the clergy, right? But we created these particular schools, and it changed the society of the day. We then moved to the Victorians and the Edwardians. The innovation that we had was automation. You know, we had a Britain that was the workshop of the world. We managed 3/4 of the known world. We ended up needing a different type of society. We needed people who were numerate, who were literate, who were innovative. So we created schools for the many. The many started off at school at probably the age of 10. They left at the age of 13. Hopefully they were numerate and literate because we needed people that would manage those particular factories. At the day, what we used was automation. And that's exactly what we did with our education system. We automated it. We had people sitting in rows, we had bells going on that was in shift work, we put people in subject areas, and we moved people from one particular area to the other. We used that Tayloristic approach that worked well in terms of automating the mills, and we brought that into education. And that's the system that we've had in place right the way up to today, when along comes the age of the individual. And the age of the individual was not when we started putting desktop PCs into our schools. The age of the individual is now when we've had things like the smartphone and the tablet. And the reason for that is quite obvious. Can anybody tell me, as an educator, what the first three have in common that the fourth age doesn't have? What's the difference between those first three and the last one? The relationship, exactly. The relationship of content and the relationship of who's in control of the learning process. In the first three ages, as educators, we're in control of the content and we're in control of the learning process. In the top one, we're no longer in control of the content because we've seen the wealth of content that's out there. And these sorts of devices that our students have are very disruptive, which is why we don't like them in our classroom. We don't like them because we're not sure whether the child at the back is updating their Facebook status or actually writing their essay. So we need to look at a way in which we can harness that particular technology. And in the same way as a piece of paper is just a piece of paper, unless it's put in the hands of a good educator will mold that technology to meet their specific needs for their specific subject with their specific students. The same is true with the tablet. Those of you who buy a tablet or look at whether it's iPod Touches, whether it's iPads, go to the App Store and start looking up GCSE French or GCSE Science, will only find revision guides. Right? You will not get the best out of that technology if you start to look for apps that show you how best to use it to teach that subject area. Right? It is just another tool, like a piece of paper with a pencil. You have to start thinking innovatively outside of the box, look for apps that were created for other purposes, and see how you can redefine how you use those apps in the classroom. Because there are so many different apps out there that, like I said, when you look in terms of education, most of the ones you will find will either be examination papers or revision guides. And that will be about it. So let me give you a few examples. Right? It's really about how we as educators engage with the technology. So this is a map that was put together with research both from the UK and the US. Right? It's all about how we engage with the technology as teachers. Some of us start off at the bottom where we will exchange one piece of technology with another. Whether that piece of technology is a smart board or an interactive whiteboard, whether it is a wonderful tablet where there's a table where everybody gets around it and it has multi-gestures, whether it's a smartphone, it makes no difference whatsoever. Some of us will still use it to replace one piece of technology with another. Whether that's replacing the projector with an iPad, I am not changing the pedagogy at all. I'm not changing the classroom dynamic at all. I am merely swapping one piece of technology with another. And in this instance, I probably feel very comfortable. And that's what 99% of our schools did with interactive whiteboards, which is why 99% of us failed were to get the best out of that particular technology, right? Because we didn't know how to effectively use it within a particular part of the curriculum. We were taught technically how to write boxes with it, right? But we didn't effectively change the classroom dynamic, right? Some teachers did, but most didn't, because we didn't have that particular training. So here's a particular path that you can look through. So we can start with exchange, we can move through enrichment, through enhancing the learning process, through then significantly altering the way that teaching and learning takes place, using that technology, doing things with the technology that you couldn't do without the technology, right the way through to empowerment, where the learner takes control of that process, where the learner becomes a creator of content as well as a consumer of content. And all of the research shows that in actual fact the tipping point, the event horizon that happens when you get the best out of that technology is when we alter the way we teach. Many of you will have heard of places like the ESSA Academy in Bolton that have sort of, you know, one-to-one iPads across the entire academy, where they're entirely wireless. They do not have textbooks. Every child and every teacher has an iPad. They don't deliver things via smart boards. They deliver them directly onto these devices. It has nothing to do with the device. It's the dynamic of the school. It's the way the teachers use that technology in the classroom to do things differently. And I'll show you one of those pieces of technology that they use at the end, and you'll see how the dynamic can change. So some of the new approaches are things that looking like inquiry-based systems. So this can be sort of cross-curricular. It works really, really well in primary, but can also work in secondary. And this is where you're looking at using different types of tools to get students to think differently. So this is an example from one of the schools. This is a boys' school. It's a boys' prep school. And what we do with all of our schools is we use a number of common tools on the iPad. This happens to be a mind mapping tool. And we use mind mapping as a way of both teaching critical thinking skills to students. We teach them how to mind map because it is a different way of actually making notes, far better than just creating linear lists. But it also means that they think more creatively. So in this instance, this was before they were actually having to write an essay. This is on there. This is from English, so this is the English curriculum. This was Siegfried Sassoon's counterattack. And you'll see that from the central branch, they have a number of different branches coming off. So this is Oliver's mind map. So he talks about the language that's being used, the attitude to war in the book, the feelings and emotions that were drawn out within the book, the particular situation. They will locate images off the internet and they will attach those to those particular nodes. So that basically what they're doing is they're drawing up a plan of, you know, what their feelings were and basically a completely different way of expressing that book. Right? Now, we use that in every subject area in all of the schools that we work with. Sometimes it's a planning tool, sometimes it's a critical thinking tool, sometimes it's used as a tool for the individual, sometimes we will put them together in groups of 2 and they'll work on an iPad collaboratively, creating a mind map. Sometimes it's just the teacher that has the mind map and they're creating the mind map from here and it's being created onto the projector. So it's about, this is using a mind mapping tool, right? Here's another example. This one's pretty old now, but this is where pupils make use of audio. So in this instance, they were away on a field trip. They absorb, they write down all of the notes while they're away. They come back, they collectively create a podcast, which they then narrate. They then put that podcast together, and then they publish it. So here's an example of this.
Food goes. Rich Romans ate lying down. They would lie on their left arm and eat with their right.
They would eat until they were sick, and they were sick in a vomitarium. They would come back and keep eating.
The slaves would come when Romans shouted. They would have to clean.
So again, both individual tasks, but also collaborative tasks. The next one takes it to the next level. So this is where you will make use of, it's cross-curricular, so you make use of sort of existing curricula as well. This is art. So this is where it was digital storytelling, but in traditional art they were using crayons to create their pictures, but then each of the students that created the picture then had to tell their particular part of the story. So they wrote a script, that went along with the picture, and they then narrated that part of the picture, and then the whole story was put together as an enhanced podcast.
In bed, and he had a nightmare, so he ran outside into the forest. He stayed there for a long time, and his hair grew long, and his beard grew long, and his toenails grew long as claws.
So Merlin's sister, the Queen, thought to herself, how would people think of her with Merlin running around in the forest? So she ordered the hunters to go and tell him to come back.
Okay, so what about taking it then a stage further? What about the publication of electronic books? Well, you know, we know that that word processors were very good at creating text and printing out text, and that you can embed images, so you can embed photographs in that text. But of course, when you have devices like this, you know, this can record audio, this can record video. So what we decided to do is, this is a group of boys that were on a field trip. They were on a field trip to the Royal Academy. They were attending a sculpture workshop. So what we said to them is, right boys, you've got your iPads with you. We want you to record what you're doing whilst you're there. And what you will do is, your exercise at the end of the day is to create an e-book, a standard e-book which can be read on an iPad, or they could export one that would be read on a Kindle, right? But it has to have images. If they want, they can put audio and video explaining the day. So rather than just write an essay, they could add additional material. So let me just quickly go out of here and go into my bookshelf, and I will show you one of the students' books. So this is Zane's. Let me go back to the main page. So you'll see it's so this was created with an app on the iPad called Book Creator, and that's another sort of generic app that we use throughout the curriculum. So we've used this in English, in MFL, in science, where they've taken experiments, they've filmed experiments, and then they've written the experiment up. So you'll see this is his book, and he's built in his images, he's built in audio, so he's built in a narration.
We set off to the Royal Academy of Art on a sunny Thursday morning. We got onto the coach, and after about an hour we finally arrived. We soon went to the workshop.
And then in his book, he's also put a number of images that he captured, so some photographs. Then they attended the workshop. He's embedded some video.
Just filming that very quickly. Wow, just film yours as well. Wow.
Okay, so, you know, again, this is just a different way of them creating that content, but it allows them to be a little bit more expressive. And we've done this with, we did it with World War I poems, where they started off with their mind maps. They put their mind maps in an electronic book with the text, and then they also read their own poems as well. And we made, sort of from the school, we made a complete anthology of World War I poems from the pupils. So that's another example of sort of pupils creating work, right the way through to, you know, where you look at things which might be seen as a little bit more complicated. This is a video production. I'll show the video, and then I'm sure you'll be able to guess which part of the curriculum it was. So in these instances, what we're doing is we're flipping the classroom. So the idea is they still do their homework, but the homework element is the research. The production element is what they do in class, because that's where the IT is. And in this instance, the assignment was to create a movie trailer that explained the Great Fire. We've also done it with things like the plague and other things. Some of the pupils, of course, got the wrong imagery, or they got the wrong information. They may have put the wrong date in. So the information is still there. It's just the format that it's in is slightly different, and it just makes it a little bit more engaging. What we've also found is that the pupils themselves then start to come up with ideas of how they will use it. So, for example, we were again, this was in a history lesson. One of the students turned around and said, when they were doing the Tudors, and they'd found an app that they'd seen on the TV for Ancestry.com, you know, this website that you can go to look at your family tree. And this free app allowed you to put your photographs in of your parents, and when they got married, and when they were born, and when they died. And this girl's turned around and she said, well, why can't we use something like that? Because then we could go onto the internet and we could find pictures of the Tudors, and we could put them into the family tree program, and then we could put when they were born, and it makes it a lot better than just writing out a list. So they also start to rethink how they can make their education a little bit more engaging. This is linking sort of the old and the new. This is making use of QR codes. A QR code is basically a representation of a piece of text. That piece of text can be a web link. It can also just be an ordinary piece of text if you want. It can be sort of a translation of of just ordinary text. In this instance, we use these. This is Princess May Primary School in Hackney. We make use of QR codes in library books. So in the front of the book, there's a QR code that links to a blog, where the pupils, when they've read the book, can write a review. And then at the back, there's a link to a comprehension exercise. So they go to an online comprehension exercise, which they can fill in to see if they've understood the book. Some of the teachers will make use of these on the board. So they'll bring up a QR code, and the pupils just reach up and scan the QR code, and that takes them off to a particular web page. So this is where sort of there's the two technologies mixing together. This is something where, again, these were the teachers at Hackney. This is sort of a project that's been going on for about 2 years now. One of the issues we faced was with marking, because the first thing people do with these is they say, oh, well, what we can do is we can put them in front of the pupils, and they can write their notes, and they can write their essays. Well, the question is, well, what happens then? Because the old process, the automation process, still happens. So the teachers were saying, well, what they do is they write on their iPads, and then they email it, or they upload it into the shared folder on the school. And then what does the teacher do? Well, the teacher downloads it, they print it out, they mark it, they highlight it, they photocopy it, they stick one copy in the child's book, and they put another copy on file. So we thought there must be a different way of being able to mark a child's work. Well, we know that you can actually record what's going on a screen, and we know that these machines have microphones built in. So one of the teachers decided he was going to try video marking. So what happens now is he downloads the text, but marks on screen, so highlights on screen, and then gives a commentary, records that as a video, and then puts that video up onto the child space on the server. So the child looks on the server and says, oh, I've got a report back from my piece of work, and this is what they now get.
Okay, Aria, thank you for uploading your whale sharks text. As I've said before, love your first paragraph, really, really hooks the reader. And your appearance paragraph, fantastic. I've just highlighted in green one or two of the things that I really like. I love the adverbs that you've used here, really add to your sentences. I also like this really nice connecting phrase that you've used here. This cartilage enables the shark to be extremely flexible, enabling it to turn swiftly in the water. This second enable makes your sentence sound a little bit clumsy, so if you could perhaps find another word, perhaps a which clause could be used here. That might make that sound a little bit less awkward. Now you've gone on to your quiz, that's great, but you're supposed to finish your text first, so you must finish this life cycle paragraph. then your conclusion paragraph, and then you can finish up your quiz, and then you'll be finished. Okay, well done, it's looking good.
Okay, so that's now how pupils in Hackney get their feedback. So one of the things I'm going to demonstrate now is this total change, right? Which is particularly, it works well when there's a one-to-one, but it is going to show you a little bit of the future, and then we'll go maybe into a Q&A. So what I want you to do is, you'll see on here, you'll see the teacher app. So remember, in this classroom where you are the pupils, there is no projector, right? You're just seeing this so that you can actually see what the teacher looks like. So what I want you to do on your iPad, I want you to launch an app called Nearpod. Right, so for those who don't know how to use an iPad easily, if you swipe from left to right all the way, you'll get a search box like this. If you type in NEAR, you'll see an icon that looks like that. If you tap on it, it will launch, and you will be asked, first time it launches, you will be asked, you'll see there's a teacher element at the top. Don't do the teacher login, because you're pupils. It will ask you for a PIN number. So at the start of the lesson or in advance, I'm going to give you the PIN number for the lesson. The PIN number is what you see at the top. It's FOPDE. So if you type in FOPDE, if you need some help, just put your hand up and Mark will rush around. It will download the presentation. So this is a presentation created in PowerPoint. Right? This is the, like I said, what we've done is we've created a presentation that also embeds assessment. So I can basically hop from slide to slide. I can do assessments, as you will see, and it gets a bit scary. So the only bit you've got up here is just to show you what you can see as a teacher. You really should be looking at your screen. Okay? So you'll notice when it's downloaded, I can see there's at least one on it. I was promised the Wi-Fi is going to be good enough, Steve.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. Is yours still downloaded? Yeah. It's probably because there's loads of you doing it all at once. So you'll see on the teacher, just to give you an idea, on the teacher app, you'll see at the bottom, here I have my slides, and I can jump in and out from any slide, or I can run it in a linear format. So we're going to jump in and out of these. At the top, I can see how many people have actually connected. Once it's downloaded, it will install. And the more that get there, see, it's not as good as you thought. In schools, it's nice and easy. So, well, we got 2 already. Sorry?
Mine's live.
It's yours live. I'll give it a few more minutes. And then, like I said, I will slowly move on. As yours downloads, don't worry, you'll catch up. Okay? So how many people have sort of the first slide? You should see this slide on your machine. Has anybody got there, or are some people still downloading? You're still downloading? You've got it, right. You'll notice that you can't move forward or backward. Right, all you've got is that one slide. I'll tell you what we'll do, Mark. Can you mirror yours? If you mirror yours onto there, and that way at least everybody can see the student experience.
You just have to see me.
Yeah, oh, there's 9 of us. There's 9 of us, it's getting there. It's 9 of us, it's getting there.
That's me.
There we go. So there's the other, for those who haven't downloaded it yet, and then I'll start rather than wait for everybody. There's 11 of us now. Okay, so what it means is I, as the teacher, am still in control. So what you're seeing up here is a student one. So what I can do is, the first thing I can do is I can move your machines forward. Right? So if you notice on your machine, look on your iPad, not on the front one. Right? I should have moved you forward. I now want you to type in your name. Once you've downloaded yours, it'll move you forward to that one. Yep. Now, I can see, right, on my teacher, that I've got Alex, Ian, Mark, Wei Ling. So there's 19 of us joined. There's 23 of us joined, so that's good. Jill, Mark, Mike, Steve, There we go, we're getting there now. Michelle, Rachel, Wenda. So on my machine, I've got a student list, right? So let me just walk you through, right? So that's all you will see. So now I'm going to take you through the presentation. So obviously, I want to be able to send slides directly to your machine as though it were on the large board. What this means is I don't have to have a front. So because the presentation is being displayed on your iPad, I can change the dynamic of the classroom. I can put people in small groups. I can sit them on bean bags. I can have them facing all over the place because they're actually looking not at a front, they're actually looking at their individual machines. So the other things I could do is I can actually play video. So I may want to have a piece of video in my presentation. And that video may be an explanation. So I might want to say, right class, headphones on. I want you to watch this video, and then I'm going to give you a test. So headphones on, and watch this particular video. So now you're all having video played on your individual iPads.
Nearpod has been a reinvigoration for me as a teacher. I have been teaching for 35 years, and you need to reinvent yourself every so many years.
I love the way that the teacher controls the pace.
And
again, I decide when they go to the next page
so
and
not... give you a particular length of time to watch that video. Like I said, the workshops will show you how to create these, right? So the other thing I want to do then, so let's say I've shown you a video on how to do something, but then I want to assess you. Because it's all well and good in a traditional teaching environment to show you stuff, but I now want to assess you. But I want to assess you individually. So let's have a look how good you are. Let me think. Let me give you a quick assessment. So this time I'm going to jump over a number of slides. Let's see how good you are. So what I'd like you to do is complete the following. Thank you, Keith. And Lindsay and Kelly. So again, right, if you notice, on my teacher iPad, I can see every response from every student. Yeah? Not only that, but of course, as a teacher, what do I want to do? I want to be able to share good practice and bad practice. I want to share common mistakes. So I may turn around and say, let me see if we can find one. You're all so very good. But let's turn around and say, here's a common mistake that everybody makes. So now what I've done is I've selected one student's work, right? And unless you're really out of it and shout out, that's mine, right? You don't know whose it is. So I've selected a student's work and I've shared it with the rest of the class. So I can share, common mistakes without stigmatizing individual students. Any maths teachers? Yeah. Right? So I can also drop backgrounds onto this. So let me give you another example. So I might be able to do something like this and say, what I want you to do is solve that equation, but show you're working out. You're not going to do it, of course, are you? Yep. I'll let you scroll anything on it. Okay? Yep. So here, for example, you might want them to actually draw their workings out. And again, I can turn around, I'll get every answer on here, right, as an image. Yeah? And, at any point, I'll rush through these because I said I want to make sure that you get to see everything, right? But of course, you do get some really interesting comments. Right, like this one, yeah. Of course, there's Mr. Smarty Pants. Yep. So again, I'm not stigmatizing students. I can see their work. Not only that, but it's recording this, and when I finish the session, I can actually have the entire results emailed to me. So what else can I do? Right. So we've done a drawing one. like I said, you'll see all of the other different ones later on. What happens if let's say I flip the classroom. I send students home with an exercise to read a chapter on, I don't know, science, or I've given them a task to do. The first thing I need to do is assess how well they understand that subject. Because I could get them back in and say, right, now I'm going to give a PowerPoint presentation. And it may be that 90% of the class already understand what I'm going to say. So I might be wasting 20% of the time. So what I might want to do is, I might want to do this. So I might turn around and say, well, actually, first thing is, I'm going to give you all a quiz. So I might turn around and say, right, what I want you to do now is take a quiz. So now you can take a quiz at your own pace. So you now have 5 questions. Let me show you what I can see as the teacher, because here's the exciting bit. Yeah, so I can see, right, every student, I can see what answer they gave. On the top I have a pie chart showing the percentage of the class, what percentage got it right, what percentage got it wrong, how well they're doing. So I now have far more feedback from my class than I would ever have. And it allows me then to tailor the rest of my lesson based on, you know, parts or gaps in their particular knowledge. So it may be that I think, well, actually, they've done really well on that. I'll just do one word example. Or it may be, you know, dear me, they're really stuck on this question 1. I mean, look at this. Yeah. So I can look at individuals and see what they but we definitely have to do this science one, don't we? Right? And then, of course, when you've finished, I can also turn around and I can share. So if I tap on the share button at the top, right? So you've now got your own individual results displayed on your device. And from the bottom, if you move the bottom slide up, you'll see the correct answer and the answer that you gave. Again, all anonymous. Right? So I can give you quizzes. I can also give free text. So I can ask, again, I can jump through a number of these slides and then I'll just finish up. So let's have another example. Let's do let's do an opinion. So I can actually find out my student's opinion on a topic. So, you know, it may be something that's really controversial. You know, I might be talking about ethics, yeah? And I might say, well, what do you think about abortion, right? Or women bishops, or homosexuality in the church, or, you know, things that maybe some kids don't really want to talk about, but anonymously, they would write things down, right? And I can actually get feedback. I can actually also get just free text, yeah? And then I can turn round and I can actually share this again with the class. So I'll rush through this because I know I don't want to be too late, because you'll all be in the session on how to create this anyway. So again, I can share this with you and you'll be able to see what the opinion was of the class, again, without stigmatizing, right? So this is a product called Nearpod. It runs on iOS and Android devices. So the teacher needs an iPad, but the students, it will run on an iPad, an iPod Touch, an iPhone, an Android device. You can get, if you talk to us, take our business card, you can get a free login, right, if you want to play with it in your school, right? You'll learn today in the 3 workshops how to create content, right, from your existing PowerPoint presentations. I'll just hop back now and finish off on my keynote presentation. So, in summary then, we see a number of technology trends. There is a shift towards deployment of mobile platforms. There's a shift in terms of content being held outside of the school, in the cloud, wherever that may be. And there are huge amounts of altruistic teachers creating vast amounts of content free of charge. On Nearpod, when you log into Nearpod, you'll also see a range of content. Initially there's a lot of American stuff, but now we have a number of British teachers who are creating free content that you can actually use with Nearpod. Right? Currently there are over 200,000 iPads deployed in schools. That's probably about 350,000 now. So, you know, you're not alone. There's a wealth of experience already out there. There's a wealth of best practice. There are people who have done things wrong, right, and understand where it went wrong. And most of it was to do with CPD. Most of it was just they think, I'll give them the technology and they can do it, and it's not about that. It's about heads understanding that it's a difference between acknowledging that these devices exist and building an educational ecosystem around those devices. It's about understanding that this is a tool and what the tool can do for you in your subject area and what it can't do. Because if you don't understand what the tool can do, then this happens.
Sag mal, Papa, habe ich dich noch gar nicht gefragt. Wie kommst du denn eigentlich mit dem neuen iPad zurecht, was wir dir zum Geburtstag geschenkt haben?
Gut.
Mit den ganzen Apps kommst du klar?
Was denn für Apps? Geh mal bitte einen Schritt zur Seite. So. Was ist?
Okay, definitely demonstrates the need for CPD in our schools. So it's really about re-engineering. It's about supporting our students with 21st century content in a 21st century context. It's about providing those students with tools, with ICT literacy that meets the needs that they feel comfortable with, where we can provide them with environments, this just being one of them, that almost mirrors what happens in their social environment, that supports this media-rich creativity that they're used to when they create things and publish them on YouTube and the like, right? That encourages collaboration and teamwork, that adapts to individual learning styles, and that accommodates this mobile lifestyle. It really does revolutionize the classroom once we understand how we can best harness that technology. It's about us changing how we teach. It's about us making best use of that which we do incredibly well as pedagogues, which is teach. But we have to recognize that we also have to look to tertiary and the way we teach, which is far more about giving people the skills on how to learn. And in the past, it's all been about teaching. What it is in today's age is about us providing those teaching skills, but also providing people with the help on how they can learn using this technology. And with that, I'll hand back over to Steve. I hope I've got us back on track. I've probably gone over, but then you started late anyway. Right, okay, so we're around for the rest of the day, myself and Mark, and we'll see you in the workshops. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Steve. I think as somebody who prides myself on sort of being very familiar with technology, I think I've learned quite a lot in that presentation. So I hope that you've all found it very, very insightful. We have got a couple of minutes. If anybody does have any questions that they would like to ask, if you're happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'll answer anything.
Keith, go for it.
Steve, just I probably think I know the answer to this, but then in terms of me delivering that sort of within a class even,
yep.
I don't have the ICT capability at the moment, I don't have the finances, but I'm guessing from what you just showed me on Nearpod there, that if we allow children who did have technology that was capable of phones, we could supplement that with our existing technology and still deliver it class-wide.
Exactly. The thing with this, the thing with the Nearpod stuff is that A, there's nothing needed on your server. So, anybody from the local authority here, by the way? Right, so the good thing is, one, you stick 2 fingers up to the local authority, right? So nothing needs to be on your server, right? In actual fact, they just need access to the internet. So, I could have run that where I'm on my 3G, and all of you are on your phones on your own data network, is the first thing. So it would run on their phone. It's very low bandwidth. To be honest, there's no excuse for being off ill, because you say, well, turn your phone on at 9 o'clock and you'll get the presentation, right? So the investment is almost there in the pockets of the kids. It's that change where the IT budget is with the end user, and what the schools should be looking at for their commitment is providing connectivity and content. So that's why a number of the schools now that actually have one-to-one iPads, the financial models that they use, right, is actually where the parents are paying for the IT in the same way as they pay for their mobile phones. So we have some schools where the parents are paying £10, £12, £15 a month for an iPad for their kid that's theirs to keep. They pay over a 2-year period. There's no financial risk to the school. There are all sorts of different financial models. They tend to be academies that do this. But we also have some primaries who have also gone down that route. We have some that use the class base, and what they do is they will use that for a Nearpod lesson. So they will turn around and say, well, okay, for this lesson, I'm going to use the iPad. So I'm going to use the features of the iPad rather than, well, I'm going to use the iPad just because I want the kids to sit there and type. If the kids are going to sit there and type into Word or into Pages, I better give them a sheet of paper and a pen because that technology is far better suited for that. So it's looking at how best to get, you know, leverage of the technology you have. But ideally, it's in a one-to-one scenario where it works. And if you do have the, you know, if there is the guts to say, well, you know, let's try it where the kids have an Android. These apps are free, right? You know, let's try an earpod. Okay, we'll let you use your phone, but you use it like this. Does that? It's a brave, you know, it's a brave thing to do, but
because it's internet-based, then if the teacher's running it off an iPad,
yep,
children can connect to it on an Android device.
Yep.
I find that's very effective.
Yep.
I think the other thing we've just demonstrated with that today is, I know it took a little while for it to download into everybody's devices, but once that happened, which maybe took circa 2 or 3 minutes in reality, everybody was able to log on to it and actually use it effectively. So as long as your internet connection in school is fairly reliable, you know, there's no.
But even if it's not, you see, I went to I gave a talk at a football club, right? And the Wi-Fi there, typical corporate Wi-Fi is great. The Wi-Fi was rubbish when all the teachers got on, right? So what I did was I went off their network and I just used my 3G on my phone because I knew that that signal is dedicated to me, so that bandwidth is mine. So you don't have to be on the same network. You just have to be connected to the internet. That's the difference.
What if the presentation you just showed us, if I wanted to view that again, can I still get it? Or
as the teacher or as the student? At the moment, you can't. In the next version that's coming out this month, they're adding a variety of features. First of all, they are adding a self-paced mode. So I can send a PIN number to students and say, I want you to work through the presentation at your own pace, including all the quizzes, the videos, and everything. And I can also send it in homework mode. So the answer is in the newer version, or in the later version that will be out sort of this month, next month, the answer is yes, you can. And also they're adding a feature whereby the students will be able to annotate on the slides and make notes so that when it records it, as I give you a slide, you can actually write on it, you know, this is a load of crap. Yeah, or oh God, I wish I hadn't written that because he's now found out it was me. Yep. So the system is evolving depending on what teachers need. Yeah.
Any other? Just you know, when you've rolled something like this out before,
yeah.
Because I was just trying to think, would you go for those teachers where you think they're most confident with IT, or would you start doing like a model on this where you were just trying to engage the staff to say, listen, barriers are not there, and then try and roll it out?
Right. The first thing you do, right, before you even put it in the hands of kids, you have to make sure that you have a strategy where all staff feel comfortable and confident in using this type of IT, right? This, feeling comfortable and confident using this is far easier than giving them a laptop. You don't have a blue screen of death. You know, there's only one button. Yeah, and it really is simple. You start with evangelists. You look for a pilot and say, you know, what is it that I want to get out of the technology? It might be you want to improve boys' reading. It might be that you want to improve creativity. It might be that you want to focus on critical thinking skills. You get some evangelists in, but you involve all of the staff. We have schools where, you know, we put in some things where we said, well, how are we going to get the devices to the school? So we turned around and the head said, okay, well, we'll look at getting teachers their own iPads. And then the teachers came back and said, well, I'd like a 32 gig one, and I'd like one with 3G, and I'd like this. And we thought, oh, bloody hell. So we then turned around and said, well, okay, let's try different models. So we put in a salary sacrifice, right? And we found in this particular school, most of the teachers wanted to buy their own. And the reason for that, of course, if you give it to a member of staff as a school device, then HMRC comes sniffing, because the next thing is they then tax you, because you're using it for your private thing as well. Whereas if you can get the benefits of the educational price, and it goes through a salary sacrifice, like I think some of them do with laptops and bicycles and God knows what else, right? You actually get to choose the one that you want. So a lot of schools, we actually have teachers purchasing their own through a salary sacrifice. And what the school provides is they buy the apps. So they buy you buy the hardware, and the schools buy you all the apps that you want. Yeah? Because your school software budget then is far less than having to buy iPads for everybody. And it's a win-win situation. You get to do your holiday snaps and create all sorts of videos and all sorts of other things, right? But you get all the software purchased from the school. Like I said, there are all sorts of different types of models, depend on your governing body, how risk-averse you are, loads of different ways of doing it.
The other thing just to actually draw attention to just before we go into break is, all of that presentation this morning was delivered using something called Apple TV. Now, I don't know how many of you have Apple TVs in your school, but if you do have these devices, they're circa £100, they're not very expensive, and it allows you to mirror things like the iPad, the iPhone, directly to your projection screen. And there is situations where within school, if every child does have an iPad, you can mirror any child-specific iPad up to the screen. So as you saw Steve do with Mark earlier on, he asked Mark to mirror his iPad onto the screen, and suddenly that child's work, content, what he's doing, is able to be demonstrated to the rest of the class from the front. So
that's what we do with the. Remember the mind mapping one I showed? That's exactly what we do in our lessons. So we give them a task, and then we get them to share. So we'll turn around and say, Ian, that's a fantastic mind map that you've done. Would you like to share that with the rest of the class? 2 clicks, his mind map is then being shared with the rest of the class on the screen, right?
We use AirServer.
Yeah, AirServer is fine if you want to make use of your legacy systems. AirServer is a good one. There's also an app called Reflector, which allows you to put more than one iOS device next to each other. So if you want to say, well, here's Jane's and here's John's, and you want to put them next to each other, similar app that runs on a Mac or a PC that's connected to the projector. So if you haven't got the £100 to spend on an Apple TV, these things cost, I think, it's about £7 that will run on your devices. So there's software that does exactly the same as an Apple TV.
Okay. Thank you very much for
You're
that,
welcome.
Steve. If we could just put our hands together one more time.
Thank you.
Steve is going to be running the Classrooms Without Walls workshop session, which will be running throughout the day. To tell you where we're now at, we're going to break now for 15-20 minutes for some tea and coffee, and to let you recharge your batteries and, I guess, have some conversations around what you've just seen. After the break, we're going to go into workshop sessions. So we've got 2 workshop sessions back to back. On the back of your name tags, you'll see you've been allocated to a group, either to red, green, or to blue. That determines which room you are going to be in. So the red group, somebody who can actually see a program might be able to correct me here, is going to be in Classrooms Without Walls. That's really easy, because you're going to be in this room that's kind of in the corner of this room. So you can go into that sort of from the outside, and you're with Steve. If you're in the green or the blue group, where is green with me? Steve. Green's with me. So green is going to be downstairs in this building. So at about 10:30, I'll be sort of floating just outside this door, and I'll collect any people who are green and take you to the room we're going to be in. And anybody who's in blue is going to be Mike looking at social media, and Mike will also be floating in the room just outside, and we'll take you to your workshop room. The workshops last about 40 minutes. It gives us a chance to look at some technology in some good depth, I think. And you'll actually get to see in Steve's workshop, or Mark's workshop. Sorry,
Mark's going to run it.
Mark's going to run it. How to actually create what you've just seen on the projector with Neopod, which I think will be quite good. We'll then circle around. So at some point during the day, everybody will get to be in all of the 3 workshops, which should be good. So if we break now for some tea and coffee, we'll sort of alert everybody outside when it's time to sort of move. tea and coffee is going to be served where you got your morning tea and coffees, just outside this door to the left. And please do use this as an opportunity to go and talk to digital nurseries and find out all about tabletop, interactive tables and things. So thank you very much, and we'll be with you again very soon.
Good.
Cheers. Good. Okay. Thank you.